At the end of the first video, I told you to forget the old notion that where there's smoke there's fire, because it's easy to get smoke, but fire or flame from that is not automatic. So that's why I always carry my Possibles bag. It's just a black nylon bag I sewed up, and gather material as I go, because you never know if there's going to be material where you decide to stop and make a fire or not. So what I've picked up is a bunch of twigs off of a standing pine tree. They're the ones that are dead and broke off with a crisp snap. I also got a bunch of bark, about like that, from an Idaho tree, which we'll see if we can process into tinder. And some grass as I went by a field. As you can see, parts of it are still green, so this is not going to be great tinder, but we'll process it and see how well we can do with it. Knowing that a lot of my tinder was not very good, I also got some pith from a mullein or mullein plant, which I'll chop up and use as an ember extender. There's a video on the channel about using mullein or mullein as a coal extender, so you can look at that and you'll know what I'm talking about. You have three enemies when you're trying to make a bow drill fire out here in a survival situation. The first one is moisture. Everything here is cold and it's damp. The second enemy is non-fibrous plant content. This grass has lots of fiber in it, but it also has lots of cellulose and who knows what else. It's not just all burnable fiber. Look how poor it is at catching, at developing and sustaining a flame. Look at that. It'll start it and it'll peter right out. And the reason for that is there's such a high cellulose content that there's hardly any fiber in here. So your first chore with your tinder is to extract the fiber. And you do that by doing this. See, whoops. You can see all the stuff falling out of here. You can see all the stuff falling out of here. That's stuff that won't burn. We just want the fibers. So if you want to get, notice how small this is now, if you want to get a good size tinder bundle, you have to start with about this much tinder, because you're going to have to buff it down into just its fiber if it's such a poor tinder as this. So I'm going to get about doing that, and I'll get back with you once I've got this job done. That bag was just about full of grass, and look, it's all buffed down to just that little bit right there. It feels green and it feels very moist. Good way to check for moisture, you put it by your lips. If your lips feel damp, it's damp. So, moisture, non-combustible plant material, and the third enemy is wind, because although the wind can be helpful in light amounts, if it's blowing as strongly as it is around here, when it's this cold, it can make it very difficult for that pile of dust to reach the 800-degree temperature. So we're going to work with all three of those enemies and see if we can't beat them and get ourselves a fire. Next, I'm going to see if this inner bark from whatever that tree was can be made into fiber to add to this tinder ball. I like to add as many different kinds of tinder as I can because it just gives me an advantage. And remember, in survival there are no guarantees, so you're always trying to create an advantage. I did the same fiber extraction process on this bark, which started out in a ball about that big. This is what is left, and it's not particularly good, but I'll add it to this anyway. There's a third natural tinder source, which I just found. I broke this off of a pine tree. It was about 6 feet off the ground. It's very dry. It's not yet punky, and so I'll show you how to get some tinder off of this too. The way to get tinder off of a stick like this, even though it's on the outside, is to split it open to the dry parts and then make very fine shavings. I'm going to start doing that now, and then I'll turn the camera off and get back to you when I've got something to show. You get the idea. The finer the shavings, the better. So here we have a little pile of shavings. It's not a lot, but I'm hoping it'll be sufficient. And I'm going to add this, what I was able to get by way of fiber off of the bark, into the grass tinder bundle once I get my coal. And we'll see if we can go from an ember to a flame. So there's my tinder bundle sitting on the Possibles bag. You can see I've put all those different elements in it. I also added some mullein chips to help extend the life of the coal once I place it in there. So just to reiterate before we move on to the next stage, you collect your tinder as you go, get as wide a variety as you can. If you can find cedar bark, by all means grab as much of that as you can because it's great. And then you have to buff it down to extract the fibers, because the fibers are combustible at a low temperature. The rest of the plant requires a high temperature for combustion. And finally, keep your tinder dry. That's why I have a waterproof nylon bag to carry my tinder in, for collecting it and for storage after I process it. So now let's move on to the next phase.